I want to talk about the rehabilitation process for an injury like this with Tiger. And you talked about his work ethic. We all know his determination. If there's any way that he can get back to normal and get back to playing, he'll find a way. But starting from, we have the rod in the leg. Obviously, the patient's stable, don't have any problems with fat on the bone, like you mentioned, or there's not too much swelling or blood loss in an organ, like you brought up. How does this rehabilitation start? How slow is it? Is it just, we're going to try and stand up for a couple weeks, then we're going to try and walk? Is it almost comparable? And this may be a bad analogy, but like I said, I'm not a doctor. I just play one on a podcast. When you have paralysis and you're getting back the feeling in your legs and is he going to have to relearn how to walk with this type of injury, or am I reaching too far?
Yeah, I don't think that's going to be the big issue for him. I just wanted to say, just to finish that last point, people always look at vehicle performance.
Yeah.
The only performance that really matters to me is the performance in the crash.
That's exactly right.
And so this is what we're talking about today, and everyone's talking about today. That's the one thing I recommend for listeners to really think about, is really look about the performance in the crash, because that's where you're going to have moments like this where we're going to say, was it worth it or not worth it, right? And so I appreciate that. In terms of his rehab, that's a story that will kind of play out over time. I don't think it's going to have trouble with like relearning how to walk, because he doesn't really seem to have the nerve or spine injuries or brain injury where you may have to do that. But I will tell you, it's about 3 to 6 months for us to find out whether his bones are healed, whether they're strong enough. Then the question comes down to, again, if there's no infection, doesn't have to have grafting, doesn't have to have more surgeries, that sort of thing. Then the question comes down to function. So the function, it seems to me at this point, and that's just my guessing from what I'm looking at, is mostly around the ankle. And if you're at home today, sit down with your shoes and just notice how much freedom you have in your ankle. And if that becomes limited, what does that limit you from doing, right? The second thing is whether he has a ligamentous injury, which, the ligaments are actually what hold everything together. And so does that require a long rehab to strengthen those back up and to make sure that he has bones that are kept into that socket, as it were? It's called a mortise. And so you want to make sure that all that's put back together. Does he need additional surgeries to reconstruct some of that? And then lastly, if you look at it, how does he distribute the weight load? So you can make it look pretty, but if it turns out that all the weight's now to the right side of the foot or to the left side of the foot, that may limit your ability to stand or your ability to walk very well. So they're going to look at all of that, and they're going to try to make sure that they're getting him the best functional output and the outcome that they can.